Puritans helped establish the first colony in Massachusetts, and they had a lasting influence on the USA. That brings us to the subject of our talk, the Puritans, or Massachusetts, that was founded by the Puritans. The first British settlers were actually royalists, so Fisher would describe them as royalists. Aristocrats, and those with aristocratic values. They were actually the first British people to come to America, and they established a settlement in Jamestown, in what's now Virginia, in 1607. And others came after them and continued that. And shortly afterwards, there were also people, Puritans, who came to what's now Massachusetts, and Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1620. That is quite some time ago, 1620. And they came aboard a ship called the Mayflower, and descendants of the Mayflower even now are very important, very influential in Massachusetts, and very wealthy and very powerful. So they were exceptional people who somehow either got together and came to America, came to Plymouth, and then they settled up the first settlement in Massachusetts. Others came shortly afterwards and established other colonies, so that you had 13 colonies, 13 original American colonies. There were 13 of them. They parallel the 13 Israelite tribes. Now there are 50. Another 37 have been added onto them, but each of those who were added onto them somehow either can be classified, can be categorized as belonging to one of the original 13, and also belonging to similar groups to one or other of the groups we find. And these original American colonies, 13 American colonies, they were ruled from Britain, but they had no representation in the British Parliament. British Parliament was divided, voted people in Britain. Britain was divided up into counties, and people in the equivalent of counties. Different areas, and people in the area, in the local areas would vote for representatives of themselves in the British Parliament. The British Parliament did not allow people from the colonies to send representatives to them, to the Parliament, so that they were without representation. They were subjects of Britain, of the British Parliament. They were mostly of British descent. Unlike other British citizens, they could not elect representatives to Parliament. In 1773, the British Parliament passed a law allowing the taxation of tea. Tea was very important at that time. Everyone drank tea, and tea was quite expensive relative to today. And so the British Parliament passed a law allowing the taxation of tea sold to American citizens, and the money was supposed to go to offset the cost of administering the colonies in America. Britain had it expensive. They did administer them. The Royal Navy had to protect them, and they did protect them, and had to provide different services to them, and all that took money. And the British Parliament wanted to get a bit of that money back, so they decided to put a tax on the tea that the Americans were drinking. The citizens, colonists, did not like this. The Americans did not like this. They said that this violated their rights as Englishmen. No taxation without representation. That was their slogan. No taxation without representation. That is, they should be taxed only by their own elected representatives, and not by a parliament in which they were not represented. And this was a culmination of a struggle that had been going on almost from the very beginning. They had begun this. And so things came to a head over this question of the tea. A group known as the Sons of Liberty, they organised a protest. Some of them dressed up, disguised themselves as Red Indians. They took control of ships in Boston Harbour carrying the tea, and they threw the tea overboard into Boston Harbour. And the British government considered this to be an act of treason and took steps to punish and repress these activities, and this led to the American Revolution and the War of 1776, in which the American colonists eventually defeated the British, declared themselves independent, and established the beginnings of the USA and the American Constitution. And this action of throwing the tea overboard has been referred to as the Boston Tea Party, and has come to symbolize the spirit of America and its traditional principle. And it was all over, no taxation without representation, and the very name Manasseh means representation, responsible representation. In other words, you have someone representing you, but you have control over them, you have a connector to them, and they are responsible to them. And that is the very name Manasseh, what it connotes. And this is what they began, this is what gave rise to them as an independent entity. This principle, and this is what they went to war about. There were other matters, other interests, so a lot of different influences, all leading up to what happened, what took place. But these are the main themes. These are what the whole story is known for. And this happened in Massachusetts. Boston is in Massachusetts. That's where it all took place. And Massachusetts was an important moving element, an important, possibly the main element in what occurred at the time. Today Massachusetts has 8 million people. It's not a populous state. It's not small, but it's not populous compared to other states. But Massachusetts has always been a leader. In the 1800s, Massachusetts was a leading manufacturing center in America during that period. Then there was a minor depression after World War II and the Cold War. Massachusetts concentrated more on technology, high-grade technology, industries, service activities such as finance, education, healthcare, and also high-grade, high-tech enterprises. The Kendall Square neighborhood in Cambridge, Massachusetts, has been called the most innovative square mile on the planet. That is where all the thinkers are. That is where the people bring up a lot of the innovative developments that keep America in the forefront today. Ethnic groups in Massachusetts today are the Irish, the largest ethnic group, 22.5% of the population, is a bit more than a fifth, followed by the Italians, 13.5%. Then the Eastern Americans, 11.4%, French Canadians, 10 or 11%. And the proportion of non-Hispanic whites in the state has declined from 95.4 in 1970 to 67.6 in 2020. Massachusetts has the second highest per capita income of US states. The highest per capita income in the USA is New Jersey. It is followed by Massachusetts, then Connecticut, Maryland, California, Hawaii, Virginia, New York, Washington, New Hampshire. And they are the states where the per capita income is highest. And 7 out of these top 10 income earners belong to the original 13 colonies of Pound America. The 7 out of the 10 of the original colonies are still the better off. And the exceptions are California, Hawaii, and Washington. Puritan settlers aboard the Mayflower, they founded Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1620. The major concentration of wealth and power today continues to be controlled by 800 families who trace their pedigrees to the Mayflower. So this still has significance. Also, we find in Massachusetts, we find the Harvard Law School. Harvard Law School is the oldest continuously operating law school in the United States. It's educated a contemporaneous majority of justices of the Supreme Court of the United States. So in the field of law, Massachusetts also leads. Also, the state gave rise to many writers who formed the basis of American literature. On an international level, we have such writers Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Louisa Mary Alcott, and others Even before the American Revolution, Massachusetts had been a hotbed of activity, a hotbed of agitation for democratic rights to be given to them. They had the concept that the governed should give consent to those governing them. They should have guarantees to protect individual expression. And it was in Massachusetts that they first raised a voice concerning these principles. And they helped, or they actually caused, the American Revolution to come into place. The first battles of the American Revolution, the first major battles were also fought in Massachusetts. Massachusetts, to a significant degree, led the American Revolution. Massachusetts helped lay the foundations of the USA. Massachusetts fulfilled the role of Manasseh. The Israelite Tribe of Manasseh has expressed itself in the state of Massachusetts. As we said, Massachusetts, one of the original 13 states of the USA, each one of the 13 states paralleled one of the Israelite tribes. These are the 13 founding states with their corresponding tribes. New Hampshire, we find Reuben to have been predominant, the tribe of Reuben. Massachusetts, Manasseh. Rhode Island, the tribe of Asher. Connecticut, the tribe of Naphtali. New York, the tribe of Benjamin. New Jersey, the tribe of Judah. Pennsylvania, the tribe of Gad. Delaware, the tribe of Dan. Maryland, the tribe of Levi. Virginia, the tribe of Ephraim. North Carolina, Issachar. South Carolina, Simeon. Georgia, the tribe of Zebulun. The state of Vermont separated from New Hampshire and it became the 14th state. We identify Vermont with the tribe of Dan. Also, Maine separated itself from Massachusetts in 1920 and we identify Maine as another section of the tribe of Asher. Massachusetts is officially known as the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The name Massachusetts is said to have been an American Indian, that is of American Indians, a name meaning the big mountain. But Massachusetts could have connotations in Hebrew. You have words in Hebrew, especially names, where you can insert the N sound or take it out according to how the phonetic feel of the name requires. So therefore, Massa could be short for Manasseh, Massa. Massa could be short for Manasseh. And as in Massachusetts, and in history we have the Scythian Federation known as the Massagatai, according to some were a combination of Manasseh and Gad, or Manasseh and the Goths, Massagatai. At all events, Massachusetts could be considered, according to that, as containing an element indicating Massachusetts. Other names of interest, places in Massachusetts, they include Ashburnham, Ashby, Ashfield, Ashland. Ash or As was short in ancient Israel, was accepted shortened form for the tribe of Asher. The tribe of Dan, with place names such as Dana and Danvers. We have a place name called Goshen. Goshen was the area of Egypt that the Israelites were settled in when they came down to Egypt. Joseph settled them there. And according to the Midrashim, he used Manasseh to be his executive officer to carry out his will. So Manasseh would have been involved in that, in settling the Israelites in the area of Goshen. We have two places in Massachusetts named Jericho. Jericho was a city in the area of Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin. We have three places named Jerusalem. Jerusalem was the capital of the combined kingdom of both Judah and Israel when they were together. We have two places named Joppa. Joppa in Hebrew known as Jaffa. Joppa. It was a city originally of Dan in the southwest. Later, the tribes of Joseph may have dwelt in that region according to the biblical indications. We also have a place called known as Marian. Marian is another form of the Hebrew name Miriam. Miriam was the sister of Moses and Aaron from the tribe of Levi. We have Salem, a place named Salem, which is another name for Jerusalem. We have Sharon, which is an area of Manasseh in ancient Israel. And then we have what seem to be Indian names, such as the Manamoet village, Manamuskiyagan, Menamsmuni, Menatoni. And these all have a root, Mana, similar reminiscence of Manasseh. Massachusetts belonged to the area known as New England. New England comprised Connecticut, whom we identify with Naphtali, Maine, whom we identify with Asher, New Hampshire, whom we identify with Reuben, Rhode Island, whom we also identify with Asher, and Vermont, whom we identify with Dan. The state of Maine, and Vermont had not been part of the original 13, but they had been added later, and they, with the rest, together made up the area known as New England. Historically, Massachusetts, with its capital Boston, it dominated that portion of the USA known as New England. Through New England, Manasseh strengthened its influence throughout the USA and helped found additional states. We should note another work, American Nations, History of the 11 Rival Regional Cultures of North America, by Cotton Woodard, 2011. He divides the whole of North America, that is Canada, the USA, and part of Mexico, into 11 different sections. And his divisions in some cases help us, they overlap what we say. They help clarify our own distinctions based on different Israelite tribes, as we will see as we continue. And this is of interest, his observations are of interest. One of the divisions that he makes is, he calls it Yankeedom. Yankeedom, meaning in effect all of New England, and in addition to that, areas adjacent to New England and areas further to the west, such as Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and part of Canada. We shall discuss all of this in more depth as we continue. Thank you. May the Lord God of Israel bless you.